Back in America, a tech story that might seem insignificant but is not. In fact, it may determine what happens in the next presidential election, very well may. A Google whistleblower has come forward to describe his company's plans to remake the American political landscape. Google, of course, is the most powerful company in the world. So when an anonymous whistleblower comes forward, in this case telling Project Veritas that Google is using internal algorithms to shape what Americans see online, and by extension what they think, you better take it seriously.
Fairness is a dog whistle. It does not mean what you think that it means, and you have to apply doublethink in order to understand what they're really saying. And what they're really saying about fairness is that they have to manipulate their search results so that it gives them their political agenda that they want. And so they have to rebias their algorithms so that they can get their agenda across.
That's the definition of propaganda, again, being perpetuated by the single most powerful company in the history of the world. This is not surprising to viewers of this show. James Dorn was fired for Google for his political views, his totally conventional, moderate political views, and then came on this show to describe the culture at Google. Watch this.
There are definitely some political biases within Google that I was trying to shed light on in the document, and that they affect many parts of the business, and for example, who they do business with and what type of content they create. And I really think that those political biases need to be addressed.
It's not just whistleblowers, though. Excuse me. Hidden camera footage obtained by Project Veritas shows a conversation with a woman called Jen Janai. Her Google title is Head of Responsible Innovations in the Global Affairs Department. In that video, Janai says that Google is working specifically on products to make certain that Donald Trump does not win another election. Quote, "We're also training our algorithms, like if 2016 happened again, would the outcome be different?" People were not putting that line in the sand, that they were not saying that what's fair and what's equitable. So we're like, well, we're a big company, we're going to say it. In other words, we're going to try and affect the outcome of the 2020 presidential campaign. Janai goes on to blast Elizabeth Warren's proposal to break Google up into two companies. Why? Check out this reasoning. Quote, "All these smaller companies who don't have the same resources that we do will be charged with preventing the next Trump situation. It's like a small company cannot do that." Huh. So using a company's dominance on the internet to sway the outcome of an election, that's their plan. There should be a term for what Janai is describing. Turns out there is a term. It's a term you've heard constantly from talking heads on television for more than 2 years. It's called hacking an election. Google wants to hack our election. They're saying that out loud. As we've been told over and over again by CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times and all the other propagandists, hacking an election is very bad. At minimum, it warrants a multi-year investigation by law enforcement agencies. And yet, it's happening now. The Washington establishment has said they want to prevent election interference, but of course that's a lie. They just want to make sure they control the elections. That's their only goal. That's why they're not attacking the real source of election interference, which is Silicon Valley. Google, Facebook, and their ilk have far more political power than Russia ever has or ever will have. No serious person doubts that. But the people in charge of our country don't care about any of that, because when Google meddles in an election, Democrats benefit. By the way, if you want to find that video, you can't access it on YouTube. Google took it down. That's not surprising. You can already be tossed off of YouTube and Facebook if you decide they're using speech you don't like. They'll accuse you of hate speech, whatever that means. Now they can toss you off their sites just for putting up videos that make you look bad. They probably won't be banning any DNC videos anytime soon. You can be certain of that. Meanwhile, this week, Ravelry, a knitting social networking website with 8 million members, banned all explicit support for Donald Trump, and only for Donald Trump. And they got away with it. And because they have gotten away with it, other platforms almost certainly will do the same thing. All of this is going on flagrantly in public, but most Republicans haven't even responded to it. They haven't reacted at all. As soon as the 2016 election was over, the press and big tech openly began plotting on how to control the narrative in 2020, which is another way of saying control the election outcome in 2020, and using the scapegoat of fake news as an excuse to control the public discourse. Republicans were in charge of Congress at the time. They did nothing. The White House commands a vast regulatory apparatus. They've sat motionless and done nothing. The only Republican who seems even interested at all in the subject and keeping big tech in check at all is new Senator Josh Hawley. He just introduced a bill that would force tech companies to act as genuinely open platforms in order to receive valuable regulatory benefits. That's the deal. They're violating the deal. Nobody else seems to care. Passing Hawley's bill does not seem to be a conservative priority, though. No one in Congress is talking about it. That's a big mistake. Successful political parties look out for their supporters and for the public at large and protect them from harm. Republicans, meanwhile, are sitting in a stupefied fog of libertarianism, doing nothing while their ideas are suppressed and their supporters are silenced. One day they'll look up and find they have no supporters at all. Who will be to blame for that? Only themselves. Dr. Robert Epstein is not a Republican, but he is the preeminent researcher into this subject. He's a senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. And he is, again, the world's great expert on the effect of the tech companies on political discourse. He joins us tonight. Dr. Epstein, thank you very much for coming on. Seeing
always a pleasure.
This videotape, reading the quotes from this Google executive, does this confirm what you've said in the past? Are you surprised by this? What's your response?
I'm not surprised in the least. It confirms in glowing terms, or in very ugly terms if you want to look at it that way, that Google not only has the power to shift opinions and votes on a massive scale, but they exercise this power. And this is what I measure in my research. So I can tell you fairly precisely how many votes they can shift. I can tell you fairly precisely how many votes they shifted in 2018.
So why is that not hacking an election?
Well, it's not hacking an election right now because Google and similar companies like Facebook are completely unregulated in the United States. So they can do whatever they please. And if they all work together in 2020 to support the same presidential candidate, which is very likely, and probably it'll be a candidate that I support, by the way, they can shift upwards of 15 million votes with no one knowing that they've been manipulated and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
So that's it. There's no election at that point. Our democracy is not real if that's allowed to happen. Correct?
Well, democracy becomes an illusion. Now, there are actions one can take. I've set up so far the only two big monitoring systems that anyone has built to actually look over people's shoulder as they're doing election-related, online activities, and to aggregate that information and see what they're being shown by these big companies. Now, in 2020, I'm actually trying right now to raise funds to build a large-scale monitoring system to keep an eye on these companies and to catch them in the act, literally catch them when they are manipulating votes and opinions. And in my opinion, that's the only way we can stop them. There are no laws in place that can stop them at the moment.
Calling attention to it might be the first step, and you've done more than anyone to do that. Dr. Epstein, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Dave Rubin hosts the Rubin Report on YouTube. The Google whistleblower says that his channel is one of the channels that Google's algorithms work to suppress. Watch this.
And right after that's happened, a lot of the content creators started to get demonetized, and their videos started to get deranked. I'm talking about Dave Rubin.
Dave Rubin himself joins us tonight. What do you make of that, Dave, when you hear that?
Tucker, I guess you didn't know when you came to my house to do my show, to my little garage studio, and you played with my dog and saw my backyard chickens. You didn't know what a crazed right-wing radical I was. So I'm glad that we've gotten that out there. Look, of course, this is complete nonsense. I mean, we've discussed this many times. I am an old school liberal, so this is not like I'm some far lefty and I'm not some far righty. I'm a pretty moderate guy. I've tried to build some bridges here. And even that now is becoming too extreme for what Google and YouTube are allowing to happen. One of the things that I've done that I'm most proud of, actually, is I've had conservatives on my show like you, like Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro, et cetera, and I've treated you guys with respect and decency, and that really is what the mainstream media and sort of the New York Times, CNN crew doesn't want people to see. They just want to create a caricature of all of you guys, so that's sort of why they're coming after me. But I will say this, just moments before we started here, I just got notified that Susan Wojcicki, who's the CEO of YouTube, she actually followed me on Twitter, so I've got over 1 million subscribers on there, and I don't have as much of it as an email address of someone at YouTube, but maybe I am starting to make some headway now. And, you know, quickly to your point on where sort of libertarians are at right now, I think there's an interesting moment here where generally small government people, and I think you're sort of in that group too, you know, our limits are being pushed on what small government actually means. And for me, I would always prefer a private answer to this in competition, but maybe there has to be a sort of two-pronged approach where politicians are putting pressure and then public people are putting pressure, and we can maybe make these companies sort of be a little more transparent, be a little more open, which really is all anyone's asking for here.
Yeah, I'd bring them to heel by force tomorrow. I wouldn't. The libertarian solution, I think, we're past that time. Would you allow a power company to say we're denying you electricity because you voted for someone we don't like? Of course, we would not allow that.
Well, I think that's
the utilities exist because the government allows them to exist. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a totally valid argument. Look, as my you know, as my friend Eric Weinstein says, it's like one day are we going to get to the point where our Republicans are going to be allowed to have phones in their homes? I mean, that's sort of where we're heading with all of this. My preference would be that these companies, through public pressure, will move. But you might be right, and I think that's just an incredibly rich debate that we should be having more often.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say that, but they've pushed us all. Dave Rubin, great to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.